first of all, if you would just begin by just telling me a little bit about you, where you grew up, what you do when you're not
Sure.
running for office.
I was born in St. Louis. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. My father was a surgeon. He was chief of surgery at St. John's Hospital in St. Louis and also ran their cancer center. So I grew up in a very medical family. I have a sister who's a medical scientist at WashU, and I have 2 nieces who are medical doctors. So, you know, his presence was very pervasive, and that medical presence in our house was very pervasive. But I was born in St. Louis. I actually came to Columbia when I was 17 years old as a freshman at the University of Missouri, and I've been here ever since, and that was about 25 years ago, with the exception of the time that I was in Vermont when I went to law school. I graduated from the University of Missouri with a geography degree, which is kind of one of those trivia questions, you know, because it's a fairly small department. It's a wonderful department, though, and it's an interesting story because I actually went into it because I was very interested in geopolitics, and there was a professor who was nationally recognized, Trenton Cosbay, in the program, and actually my first semester in the program he died, unfortunately, and it kind of changed the dynamics of the program, and I went into physical geography, which is hydrology and earth processes, and that actually led me to my environmental law degree. So I did go to Vermont. I was in Vermont for 3 years getting my law degree and my master's degree in environmental law, and that's the top program in the country, and I'm very proud of that degree, but my undergraduate degree is from the University of Missouri. I met my wife, Stacia, here at Mizzou. She also is a Mizzou graduate. We got married here in 1990. We actually got married at the Stevens Chapel and had our reception over at the Blue Note, which is where I worked all through college, worked there for about 5 years. We now have 3 kids. My son Max is 10, my son Wolf is 7, and my daughter Leda is 3. The 2 older ones are in the Columbia public school system, which we're very involved with. The younger one is still in preschool. When I graduated from Vermont and came back to Missouri, I started out as an assistant attorney general, and I was both for environmental prosecutions and criminal prosecutions. I was a special prosecutor for the state of Missouri and prosecuted criminal cases all over the state, violent sexual crimes, murder, capital murder, a variety of cases, patient neglect, Medicaid fraud, things like that. I was also at that time a special assistant U.S. attorney for federal prosecutions. Did that for about 4 years. And went into the private sector for a while. I was also the Deputy Director and General Counsel of the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, which is the environmental enforcement agency for the state of Missouri. I have about 2,000 employees, a little more than that, and a very large budget. And you know, the great part of that job, in addition to the environmental issues, the Department of Natural Resources also oversees the state's 83 state parks and historic sites, which that's the fun part of the job. Because my family and I were avid users of Missouri state parks. We love to go camping and do a lot of biking. I am now a partner at a law firm called Lathrop & Gage, which is a fairly large law firm. It's a national law firm based out of Kansas City. We have about a little over 300 lawyers. It's the oldest law firm in the United States west of the Mississippi. It's a great law firm. My practice is mostly energy and environment law, but I do a lot of healthcare law. I represent a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, a lot of hospitals, particularly rural hospitals around the state. Let's see, getting back to your question, more about me. Again, we're very active with our kids' school. Not a day goes by that my wife and I don't discuss our kids' future and the importance of the decisions we make every day on our kids, and that's one of the main reasons that led me into running for this race.
All of your experience that you're talking about, how does that make you the best candidate for the next position?
Well, in all of those positions, you know, it's interesting because, for example, on the murder cases, you know, no dollar amount involved, very highly emotional cases where you've got victims' families who are looking at you to make sure that justice is carried out. And while, you know, especially in some of the rural areas, those cases might not get a lot of political attention, they don't involve any money, but those are some of the most important cases that I ever did. Because those are the cases where it is all on your shoulders. And if you don't do everything you can do in a case like that to get justice for a family of a victim, they do not get justice. And there's frankly nothing worse than that. So those are very high-pressure, high-stress cases, but they're very, very rewarding. When you get justice for a family, there is nothing more rewarding than that. That's a very important experience for me in running for this race. But the other issue, too, is some of the obviously more, you know, high-profile situations, high-dollar situations. And a good example of that is while I was Deputy Director and General Counsel at the Department of Natural Resources, The Tomsauk Reservoir, which is owned by Ameren UE, which is the largest electric utility in the state of Missouri, supplies the area of like St. Louis. Down in Reynolds County, Missouri, which is in southeast Missouri, the reservoir failed and released over 1 billion gallons of water from a 55-acre reservoir on top of Prophet Mountain, and not only caused unprecedented environmental damage, but actually wiped out Johnson Shut-in State Park, which is frankly just a jewel in the state park system. And if you've ever been down there, it's on the Black River. It has the shut-ins, which are a naturally occurring feature in very old granite where the water runs through the rocks, and it's a great recreation area. There's a lot of biodiversity. There are plant types in that particular valley that don't exist anywhere else in the state of Missouri. And so again, you kind of had several horrible aspects to that disaster. You know, number one being the environmental damage, number two being the loss of recreation for the citizens of the state who own that park. I was lead counsel for the Department of Natural Resources in settling that case. And again, I think it's a good example of my skills. I'm very proud of that settlement. You know, a case of that magnitude, which normally would drag on through the court system for years and years and years. We settled that case in less than 2 years, just a little short of 2 years. It was a $179 million settlement. Not only was the event itself the largest man-made environmental disaster in the state's history, but that settlement was far and away the largest settlement of that type in the state's history. And you know, the interesting thing about that is a settlement of that nature it's a contentious proceeding. You know, Ameren, there were 4 parties to that settlement. Ameren, obviously, the Department of Natural Resources, the Attorney General's Office, and the Department of Conservation. Everyone has a stake in the outcome. Not everyone agrees on every issue. So it's one of those situations where, while you may want to pull your hair out and say, you know, it's my way or the highway, you simply can't do that. You have to know going in what your game plan is going to be, and you have to know what you can give up and what you can't give up, and you've got to negotiate as professionally and as persuasively as you can. And I'm very proud of the work I did on that case.